we always see people's posts, Maba poster, and it's amazing content, obviously. Whether you're posting that key near the kitchen or you're posting the sold sign, it's absolutely inspirational because we also understand sort of the historical context of us as young Black South Africans being able to access homes. But we also mustn't take it for granted of Uguti. There are so many few of us who are able to even access that. And there's nothing wrong if we don't do it by age 25 or age 30 or age 35. Or if ever for that matter, right? And the if ever could be a choice. You could decide to actually, I want to only rent even though I can get pre-qualified and get a bond facility. So I really do want to urge Abantu, as you consume different content, especially when it comes to property, and see different posts from Abantu who are young, whether it's 21 or 22, buying their first home or even renting, in a suburban area, in a lush type complex. You're not behind. You're not missing out on much. If anything, you're missing out on a very big bond installment and levies and electricity. You're missing out on having less money in your bank, and that's the worst thing to miss out on. So it really is okay. And I think those of us who are able to access it earlier, great. And those of us who may not have the opportunity to do so, it's also okay. So I think that's actually something that we always need to be careful of. Another comment that came through was around Flisp. I can't find the guy's exact comment, but he was asking about, he had said he wished he had known about Flisp earlier. So Flisp is the financially linked individual subsidy program. Yes, got it right without reading it. And this is for first-time home buyers who earn below, I think, 3,501, to 22,000, if I remember. It's run by government, and you are able to access a grant when you're a first-time home buyer who has not been a beneficiary of another government housing program. So, for instance, you can't be an owner of an RDP house because then they would say you've already got another housing subsidy or housing program that government has that you're benefiting from, and you're able to, with your bank, able to access the grant, and I think you get up to just over 100,000. I think it's 120,000 that can go off, and it goes off towards legal fees and even the bond itself. The big thing is you must already have the bond facility. You must have already started the process and have the bond facility because they paid straight into the facility itself. So just inquire with your respective bank about it when you are making the application. I know that right now, because of COVID, they had been having a few issues in terms of processing Flisp subsidies and Flisp applications. There was a recent transaction I dealt with. Typically, I think the Flisp process adds about like a 4 to 6 week period in a normal sort of cycle of a transaction. This time around, it added just slightly longer, but it still went through. I had actually interviewed somebody from social housing who had said, Uguti, in the previous, last year, they didn't exhaust their budget, and because it was COVID, and instead of Treasury sort of making it lower, they said they're going to still give them this year's budget, so they essentially have more budget in their books for Flisp. And I know that this is one of those things that actually keeps me awake at night because it's money, it's there, it's our money, it's taxpayer money, and it's made to help people access a home. So it's literally made to help first-time home buyers within a particular income threshold access a home. And it's thing Abantu who need to know about it don't know about it. I know that the process can be quite tedious, and because it's a lot of paperwork and it takes quite a long time to process. But Yona, it works. It works. I think that's the big thing about it. So if you do want to access it, look it up, and certainly when you're applying with your bank, have a conversation with them, because sometimes I know with some of the banks they are sort of working closer with housing, but fundamentally this is something that is done by housing and not the financial institutions themselves. I want to bring back Okarabo in our conversation. Karabo, one of the things that Usivu mentioned was around furniture. And I think this is actually one of those things that we underplay. I know I did. I may have quite a number of properties, but my furniture game is just absolutely terrible. And it's because I guess on the one hand it's not the biggest priority, but on the other I'm like, listen, I buy properties like I buy like coffee. I don't have the money to buy furniture because it's so expensive. But I'll buy it, like I'll buy the property. But the thought of like spending like 5, 6, even 15K on a couch just gives me chest pains. So when I know that when we're having the conversation, earlier, was this is now off air, we were talking about one of the things that you then appreciated with having saved up for as long as you had saved up and not bought the property, for example, in your early 20s. If you can reflect a little bit about, I think some of the perks of having planned and maybe waited a little bit, because sometimes abantu banefomu, but actually there are these other costs that we don't talk about, because as much as that thing, a Midrand is a joke, there's a reason why we end up just having one couch, it's because it's Ziyadura, like Ziyadura, and it's okay.
Yeah, so I think definitely for me, the complete opposite with Sivu, where he had like saved up quite a lot for furniture. I think for me, it was a little bit different in the sense that, I knew I needed new furniture, and you can't now move from your smaller apartment and then you move into your house and you're like, oh, wait, this doesn't work in here. So I definitely couldn't go and buy all of my furniture at the same time. It was just like utterly impossible. So that's where another lesson came in, that you can never save enough money, because if you've saved enough for all the other costs that come with buying a house, if you've saved more than you even, plan to save, the nice thing is you can go and like buy all of the amazing furniture that you want. But what was very important for me was, I think there comes a certain age as well where you're not 23, 24 anymore and you want quality furniture, right? And that means you might take a little bit longer with it, or you want to give a little bit more thinking into how you want the aesthetic of your house to look and that kind of stuff. So I'm a true believer in that becoming a process as well, where I think it's okay to take time to furnish your place as well. So if you haven't saved up all of that money to be able to buy your furniture, I think it's also okay to kind of change the aesthetic of your house as time goes on. Look, I'm not encouraging you to move in and you're now, sleeping on the floor, or you've got a camp chair and that's all you have. But I don't think there's anything wrong with you buy your nice couch today and in 3 months it's your lovely fridge, and you know what I mean? So that's the journey I had. I think I've changed like a lot of things in my house like twice already, and I've only lived in it in a year, like for a year. So I'm a big believer in, yes, save. And if you have enough money to go out and buy all that amazing furniture that you want, definitely do it. But if it's going to take you a while, I think that's also part of the fun as well, right? That you're waiting to buy quality things that you actually want, and you're not buying things for now that you're going to have to get rid of in 6 months. I'm a big believer in that too. Actually waiting, because I think sometimes we rush so that the whole house is finished so we can invite everybody and they can see our house perfect. You know what I mean? I think it's also sometimes a little bit unrealistic for most people, if you haven't had the opportunity to like save up for everything. I think so. For me, my lovely furniture buying was more of a process and kind of replacing things bit by bit until it all started coming together. And I just hate the fact that with furniture as well, you buy something today and like 6 months later you're like, this table actually bores me, I want something else. This is another very frustrating thing. I wish we could like hire furniture and then you have it for like 6 months and you can like take it back to the store and buy something else. But I do think that in itself is a journey too, because you're building your home, right? You buy your house and you build your home, and the journey to making it into your dream home is all part of the process. So whether it's going to take someone else a month or someone else 6 months or another person 8 months or a year, 2 years, I think that doesn't matter at all. And another point I wanted to add, when you were talking about mistakes that we make when we buy property, I think don't also go with the hype of what's popular now. There might be a certain complex that's popular now or an area that's popular now. This is such an individual, personal thing that like it's actually real life. It's not about what's trending and what's popular and where everybody is living. If anything else, like that is like such a sacred thing in the sense that it really needs to be so personal in the sense that you can't buy somewhere because it's the hot thing right now. And I think that's something all of us is like, I think it's easy for us to follow trends and it's easy for us to see what's popular, depending on marketing as well. Because remember, we fed with marketing all the time. So now you fed this place all the time or this certain developer and whatever, and you see their ads all the time. And then you think, oh my God, that's the hot property to buy at the moment. You go off and you buy that property and you see flames. So it's fine to be living in an area where it's not the hot thing at the moment, or buying from a developer, which most people might maybe not even know about. I think that's also okay. But it can't be, we can't buy houses like we're buying clothes. It can't be a trendy thing. It literally needs to be something that is such an individual choice that you are making. Your friends might think, why the hell would you live so far? Like, who even stays there? It's fine. I want to stay here. Perfect. You know what I mean? So I think that's also another important thing that all of us that are like fed with so much information and so much marketing from all these people all the time in our social media feeds and whatnot, to remember that you can't just go with what the popular choice is. You have to go with what's right for you and what makes sense, not because it's trendy, because now you're buying something that you're going to pay for 20 years because it's trendy.
No. And I think that's such a big consideration, that when you're buying a property, you really do need to think it's 240 months. That's so many. I mean, look, that first bond installment, your heart just skips a beat. And even if it's, for instance, lower than what you were paying in rent, there's just something about your debit order. It's not, you paying your landlord, for instance. I know landlords now were able to, have debit order payments, but it's the bond, it's the levies, it's the rates, which probably brings me to another thing that I wish I knew when I first sort of bought a property, was around rates. So I bought into sectional titles, sectional title community, and so it wasn't a standalone house as we call it. And I thought ukuthi mawuthenga into sectional title communities, the only thing you have to budget for is levies. So I knew about levies, and I didn't know what you're also going to have to pay COJ. And so, first month goes great, I'm fine. I get the invoice from the managing agent. Second month, I think it was probably halfway through the third month, if not slightly longer, I get an SMS from COJ saying I'm in arrears. And I got a few of them. And at first, I didn't see them because I don't look at the SMS folder on the iPhone at all. And then eventually, oh my word, like these are many. And then again, I thought, identity, what? It cannot be they're sending this to me. Eventually, at some point, I get a call, and and a part of me is like, I don't believe this, because Abantu will just call you, they have your details. This is before, the Puppy Act sort of came into effect. I then one day eventually called the number on the SMS line and went through to their call center. And that's literally when I learned that I have to pay COJ for rates and taxes, even when I own in a sectional title community. I didn't know this. And the guy helped me set it up, online, and got to the pin. Because I was like, but I've never even been sent the invoice. So how would I know this? Because manje sekfika ma SMS, and at the time, because I bought two properties, it's literally two different properties that are in arrears. And so eventually then, set it up, was able to make payment and knew to get these things. And so be careful of that. Sometimes with COJ, I've only got experience with COJ. I haven't bought in other municipalities. It takes a while-ish for them to send you your statement. Their transferring attorneys usually give them all the details, but you still need to set it up yourself. I hadn't done that. And I think Nabo, they actually hadn't explicitly communicated it to me, if my memory serves me correct. I'm just fortunate to the rates and taxes were not quite high, and I was able to pay that and be up to date. But as you can imagine, this wasn't something that I had budgeted for in the running costs of owning a property. And if you buy, for instance, even a standalone house in certain areas and it's relatively big, rates can be quite high, and it's something that you just do not want to fall behind on. I'm seeing some of the tweets that you're sending. Remember to use the hashtag property with Zama, so that it's also easier to just spot the chats and the comments as you are watching and your questions. We've got one from Uwetse Ramose saying not to buy a unit next to a swimming pool or entertainment area. And David, one of my guests, saying guilty. I feel like I'm part of bride parties on some Saturdays. Yeah, that's I can't relate. I am luckily very far from those spaces. Namfunda, I saw that you had your hand up. I'm gonna turn my mic off and you can go.
Thank you, Zama. So I just wanted to agree with Karaba's sentiment, right, with regards to furnishing your house. My friend was on here, but once she got her property, she felt under pressure to like have it all furnished all at the same time. I'm like, dude, take your time. Sometimes the item that you want hasn't even been made or does not even exist, right? So you can buy like one iconic piece at a time as you find it. Do not rush to have it all like furnished so you can have people over. It took me like I think 2 years for my family to come actually have like a housewarming at my house, because literally me and my friends used to sit on the bean bags because I had no couch. And when we got the couch, subsequently kept furnishing the house, and eventually got to a place where I could invite like everyone over and it could seem like a housewarming. But like no pressure, do this all at your own pace. Like it's as we've said before, and everyone has echoed these sentiments. Buying property is very personal. It's a big decision and it has to suit your life, your lifestyle. And even if not buying property is suitable for you, that's also okay.
And that's a big one, right, Mvundo? That and I say it's a big one, but we're also living in this sort of social media era where we're posting everything, and isn't must look a certain way, and there's the aesthetic and when we go into each other's houses, or rather what we see people post isn't Rosabo. We're like, yo, okay, abantu are clearly living large and have these beautifully curated sort of houses with really expensive furniture in such a way that now you feel some type of way inviting your friends. I had the same thing. When I bought the properties, I had no intention of moving into, any one of them. At some point, I moved into one because I had a landlord who I got heartful with, and I decided, look, I've got a property I can actually move into. Let me choose which one I want, and I'll just move in there. And I didn't have furniture. I didn't have proper furniture like in my lounge for a while. And one of my anxieties was also, oh God, I don't want my friends to come over, because it's like, guys, there's really nothing here. I basically just sleep here. And eventually sort of had people slowly come over, but definitely felt that pressure of izindlu to our apartments have to look a certain way. And this is regardless of other strides that you are probably making. And you could be making them in your career, in what in your property. I mean, at the time I had multiple properties, but I was feeling some type of way. Oh God, like my apartment is actually so basic. And so understanding even dream furnishing doesn't happen overnight, and that's fine. And sometimes it could be you're furnishing, per room, and it takes you a couple of years. That's okay. And I think Tina, in our age group, so all of us in the school are in our 30s, we need to normalize the fact that people in our 30s or in our 20s, because some of us bought in our 20s, izindlu zethu don't look like top billing houses, right? For the vast majority of us. And in the event where somebody does, then assess uguti, what is it that they're doing for you to compare them, like yourself, with them. And sometimes it might be that they had or have rich parents. Sometimes That's only illegal, as we know, on these social media streets. And sometimes it's just a matter of, that was a value for them. And this is what I like, what Usibu said, that, you wanted this. And so you saved up and you spent quite a significant amount of time so that by the time you bought all these things, furnishing your home, you're creating the sanctuary for yourself. And even there, you're not like rushing yourself. So we must just normalize Uguti. It's going to not look like a Pinterest or top billing, and that's fine. And it can take a while for it to look even the way that you want, and your taste can change along the way. And those things are absolutely perfectly normal. I'm getting a lot of questions about the recording. I will make it available at a later stage. So I will download it from Twitter like I did the previous one, and I'll definitely put it up. And I'm seeing more of your comments. Remember to use hashtag property with Zama, so it's also just easier to track them. We've got one from Jambasa94 saying, I share Dr. Sivu's sentiments. One must give themselves enough time to save enough and buy when they are ready. I think I fell into that trap that when I moved into my place, I didn't have enough cash for the furniture I actually wanted. Secondly, soon after that, I went back to school, and now I manage this house, school fees, and all these unexpected additional costs. And that's a massive one. I think school is so big; it's got so many costs. So really, sinesikhathi, don't rush yourself. Zizoyenzakala when it's time for it to happen. Unomvuyo saying, understanding when buying into sectional title that you must get involved at some point, being a trustee, to understand the working of the complex, because if your complex is not collecting enough money, maintaining the value of that complex becomes challenging. I wish I also knew this with, there's a property that I have, and the reality of it is it does affect the value of your property in ways where sometimes it may become difficult. If you want to rent at a certain price point, it may become difficult for you to even sell at a particular price point where you may have to sell at a loss, for instance. So really understanding how the complex is run, and perhaps even getting into becoming a trustee or even joining a subcommittee is something that you're able to do to make sure you're just on top of these things. Karabo, so one of the questions is obviously then around considerations when you're buying with a partner. I think, a number of us, you bought alone, but as you shared earlier on, you're buying with a partner. So it's also not just your decision, what you want, what you like. You have to factor in another person who also has equal share in, the home, because too, and then too. I think if you can just reflect on the process of buying with a partner and just some of the things you have to consider, especially even from perhaps a legal perspective, as you're navigating buying this new home with your significant other.
I think legal things first, definitely, because it's real life. You need to take emotions out of it and make sure that legally you're both protected, and you know the steps that you have to take should you decide to go off on your own.
I don't know if it's only on my side, but Karabo, I am not hearing you. I'm going to mute myself again, but I'm not hearing you. If you can perhaps mute and then unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Oh.
I'm still not hearing Ogarabo, and I can see you had muted and unmuted yourself. Let me just check. David, are you able, David, or
we can hear Garabo?
Are you able to hear Garabo as she was speaking, or maybe the error might be on my side?
We can hear Garabo.
We can hear Garabo.
I think it's you, boo. Should I carry on? Oh, this isn't good.
I think you can carry on. We'll just message them in the meantime.
Okay, cool. I think, checking things legally first, taking emotions out of it.
So now
extremely
the tech gremlins are doing something. Because I can't hear anybody anymore, and nothing has significantly changed on my side. I'm going to mute myself again, Garab, and just see one last time if we're going to have that working.
Okay, cool. Can you hear now, Zamandunga? Maybe you muted your sound or something.
Okay, everyone, so I am having a minor technical glitch. I can't hear anybody. And I know that at some point, I think David, even Steven Nomo had, Nomfundo rather, had their mic on. I'm going to try and probably go to it from my MacBook to see if that might be better or what. So let me just try and do that.
Maybe instead of dead air, Karabo, can you just continue with what you...
Yeah, that's what I was like, it's so far where I carry on. What I was basically saying is I think like taking emotions out of it if you're buying with somebody else and making sure that legally you're protected. I think like in any sort of partnership, whether it was business, whether it's with a friend, with a partner, whatever it is, obviously like you need to get your legal things together. I think that's very important. I think being able to compromise and knowing that it's just not about you only, but the next person as well, because you both need to live in that space and be completely comfortable. And I think the minute you're not building as well, it's so difficult to find the perfect place for both of you. Like I suffer from that. Like I'm such a perfectionist. I think at some point I'm going to really need to like build my own place. We're busy remodeling like 2 other places at the moment. And I've realized through that sometimes that is the only way you can seek at what's close to perfection as possible. It's realizing that there's certain things you're honestly going to have to compromise on as you continue to build your portfolio, as you continue to work towards one day living in that perfect dream home. Because, you find a place that you like, but you're like, this kitchen, I would have changed this, I would have changed that. But it's knowing that as time goes on, you can change a few things that you maybe might not like, or you can work towards at some point, building something that you both are completely happy with. But I think getting your legal things in order and compromising and knowing that does perfection actually exist? It doesn't. Not at all. Not that you should settle, but the perfect home is probably going to be the one that you build.
Yeah, there's
if you can even build your perfect home. But I think perfection might not exist at all until you build, and that's something I had to accept.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Garbo. So I now can hear everything clearly. Thanks for the comments that you could hear Garabo clearly earlier on. I almost want to say there's no such thing as a perfect home, even when you build. There are just certain concessions that you ultimately end up making. And you sometimes make them because of budget, because of time, because there might be title deed restrictions, or whatever the case is. So you kind of have to have I always say to friends and even a few people who've reached out for consultations that, look, you almost need to have these are my list of non-negotiables and must have. And if I have this, I know that I'm going to be, happy. And this is for when you're building or even when you're buying something that's already built. And they must also be relatively realistic. Like you can't want to have a 5-bed, 5-bath, but you have a 2 million rand budget. That is not a thing. So when you understand those sort of limitations and what's possible, it certainly does help you with managing the need for perfectionism, but also the reality, look, you're not going to necessarily get everything that you want. I see that there are a few people who have requested the mic. I won't open up the space for mic requests. I haven't gotten comfortable with that part. I think even with the first space that I did, I actually hadn't opened it up. But also because we're about to round up the space, I want to not have them to be too long, because property is one of those things that you must learn about in different intervals and pace yourself as much as possible. So we shouldn't be talking about it for too long. But I do see some of the questions and comments that you have, sent through. And I think one of the big ones was even around, new developments, different people wanting to get a sense of buying into a new development and sort of navigating that bit. And I want to bring you in, Nomfundo, with your buying into a new development, and because you've even shared this. I think when you look at buying into the new development, knowing what you essentially know now, and even all the things that you've learned, and having to, put it up a gate or tiles, do you think that you would still buy the same property if you knew all of that from the get-go? Or would you have, probably made a different decision had you had all the facts?
I would have still bought the same property. I definitely have enjoyed curating my space to my taste. So everything in my house is exactly the way that I wanted. Like the tiles I chose, downright to the faucet, to the shower head, it's my choice. And it also doesn't cost an arm and a leg. So I'm not overwhelmed by the cost. And there's all the additional costs that come afterwards, like the rates, the tax, that you don't actually get to think about. So when they did come, I was not struggling because I had gotten into I had bought a property that was too expensive for me. So given the choice to do it all over again, I would still do it.
Great, love that. And Sibu, I want to bring you in. Given the choice, would you have bought earlier? So one of the things I really appreciate about you having bought later is you also opened up room for yourself to be able, for instance, to further studies, go study abroad, because the moment you have a property that you are paying off, making those kinds of decisions becomes just that much more complicated, because sometimes you'd be like, landlord. So you're not looking at renting your place out while you're studying abroad, and so having to manage a tenant, that's not what you wanted to do. But you also don't want to leave a property vacant that you have to be paying for while you're abroad. So had knowing now everything that you know, and having given yourself the time to wait, would you have still waited, or would you have bought just slightly earlier?
So I don't have many regrets in life, but one of the things that I do regret is not buying a property I had seen when I just moved to Cape Town. And at the time,
oh my word!
A place in Gardens.
Cape Town, when you just say Cape Town, I have we are but yes, continue.
It was a 1-bedroom apartment in Gardens, Cape Town, which is super, super close to the city center. And at the time, I was just an intern. I think it was in my 4th month of working. And this place was 600,000 Rand. This was in 2014. And I thought, no, man, I could afford it, but I was like, I just started working. And I didn't buy it. And I think that's, for me, one of my biggest regrets. I think had I bought that back then, I know the value at this point in time would have been a lot. But I was still very young and also very unsure as well. So as much as it is a regret, but it's still a part of the journey of life. I wish I had bought it back then.
Yeah, Cape Town, I share the same sentiments. There's certainly times when I looked and there were such great properties at what now looks like quite the steal. But I like this notion, and that's okay. I think we also need to be mindful of the reality. For some of us, we are sort of the first generation professionals, right? We come from working class parents, and we're now able to access money at a price point that our parents, who have been working for 20, 30, sometimes plus years, still don't earn. And there's certain freedoms that we want with the financial access to Leo Malileo. And sometimes it could be, like you just want a YOLO. Like, okay, for a year, responsibilities, let me just YOLO for this year. Sometimes you'd be like, I want to be able to, go abroad with friends. I mean, there was that time when doing Bali and the places was a thing. I regret that I didn't jump on that bandwagon. I still haven't gone to Bali, and I'm like, oh my God, Nami, I want to go. And so it's okay if you choose not to buy a property, early, and the only tip there, Jay, that I would give is also just put a cap on how long that period is going to be, and don't make financial decisions that set you back fundamentally. And by that I mean, don't get yourself blacklisted and drowning in debt because you were given access to all kinds of unsecured lending facilities and you maxed them out. I think that for me is probably the bigger fear for a lot of the young Black professionals. Uguti, the banks are going to give it all. They'll give you the credit card. They will give you the overdraft, all these things, and don't max those stuff out. And as you don't even take them, right? For me, overdraft mentally just didn't make sense. When I started, I was just like, I don't understand it from a conceptual thing, so never took it. I don't know what would have happened if I had taken it and had sort of taken the maximum of whatever would have been offered. So, it's okay. But give yourself now with that stop. Lena, at least I'm putting it away. And it doesn't have to be towards property. Garabo, on your end, I think any final insight around buying property, lessons learned, and of course building a home of the property that you have bought?
I think your own pace, own race with that kind of thing. If you haven't been able to invest in property when you're younger or get into it when you're younger, I think it's okay, because at the end of the day, what difference does it make if, you end up buying it at 50 and it becomes your dream home at 50? Some people will never have their dream homes by then. Do you know what I mean? So I really still share that same thought to say, yes, a lot of us do have regrets about money when we're younger, about the way we spend money and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I've also got some financial decisions that I've made that do not make sense. And maybe by now I would have been paying a certain property or two off or whatever it is. But I still think take as much time as you need, no matter how many people will tell you, why aren't you doing this now? You know what you're doing deep down, and you know what you can afford, and you know what is best for you, because people will always throw advice at you, people that are not even financial advisors, you know what I mean? People that don't even know how much you earn, your background, nothing, and they'll always try and advise you. But you're the one that knows what will work best for you. And I think you'll always look back and be so thankful for the decision that you made. And even if you do make a bad decision when it comes to whether you're renting, you're buying, or when you decide to buy, it's something that you're going to learn from anyway. But kind of just really equip yourself with as much knowledge as you possibly can, save money as much as you can, and buy when you're ready, if you even buy at all.
Yeah, I love that. Buy when you're ready, if you even buy at all. Buying is not always the best decision. And I know it sounds counterintuitive. I am in real estate. I'm a property investor, property entrepreneur. I buy properties relatively regularly. And I still say to people who say they want to buy, especially to live in, or sometimes they'll be like, maybe I want to buy to invest. You might find that in some instances, renting is actually going to cost you less, whether in the short term, certainly in the long term. Typically, renting costs you less in the long term, depending on what kind of sort of property you want. But you'd find that it would cost you less. And so when you then buy at a young age, if you're buying it like a 22, 23, and let's say you bought a one bed, chances are by mid-20s or even late 20s, a one bed may actually just feel too small for you. You selling that property, for instance, and buying another property, the cumulative cost of those actions is so much, and oftentimes Abantu don't actually factor that in when they run their numbers around buying a property. So in that period, you could have actually just rented and saved yourself, the money, because when you bought that property, you paid for, attorneys, transfer fees. Now you're selling, you're going to pay a bond cancellation attorney, and you're going to be buying another one. You're doing the whole attorney thing again. So almost be clear, if you're going to be buying a property, is it one that you want to be living in, let's say in the next 5 to 7 plus years, then base your decision to buy on that. This whole notion, when you buy, why rent when you can pay for your own bond, or when you are renting, you're paying for your landlord's bond. That's BS. Fundamentally, it's BS. And I need more people to to not firstly buy into that, but they certainly need to just stop saying that, because the numbers are clear and you can even build a simple model around it. It will display renting just cost you less, and you make the decision about what you value. And if then the extra money, because you're now paying for things that we don't measure in rands and cents, like you want to be able to paint or drill or change the cupboards and those sort of things. So that whole thing, among our people, are leading you astray. And we just need to be clearer, Uguti, there are different paths to how we navigate home, and home being wherever it is, la uhlala khona. And no path is illegitimate unless, of course, uyenza izinto is illegal. And so it's valid, whichever sort of path or decision you choose for yourself. And I want to bring in David for the last time, your last, comments, reflections, for your on